Hello and welcome to Movie Theater Time Machine's lobby. Hey, I'm here today with one of the greats that you've seen. Another, hey, it's that guy kind of person and a great actor. He's been in many different roles. You know him probably as Eugene from Grease and many, many, many others that he's gone through. Eddie Deezen, man, welcome.
Thank you so much, Nick. And Nick, by the way, I have had women say that when I was in a police lineup. They go, "Hey, it's that guy." And got into a lot of trouble that way. Yes.
I mean, honestly, dude, it's a real pleasure to meet you, and it's a really cool thing to go through this. And what we like to do on this show is really try to get a good idea of who the person is behind, all the roles and everything. Your
Okay.
memories, your favorite things. And I'd like to get started with the first thing I'm really curious with is
Mhm.
what was your earliest memory in acting? And I mean, how do you think it all got started with you being a
I
character?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm trying to think the very earliest. I was always a ham in school. I was always the class clown. Did I do anything in kindergarten? I was always getting in trouble. First grade, the first one. I would be in plays in school. I remember there was a classic story called Pandora's Box. I don't know if you know that. Pandora opens the box and trouble comes
Yeah, I
out.
know what it is.
And
Yeah,
I played trouble. I played trouble and I
you
jumped
played
around the stage,
Cheryl.
made everybody laugh. I played trouble like an idiot. I did something like that. Believe it or not, you won't believe this. And you're the first interview I've ever told this to. I did a Shakespeare play once. I swear to God, it was the one
Really?
with I was Macbeth. I had one line. I was Duncan, and I had
Yeah.
one line. They go, "Hail Duncan," and I said one line. So that was my one Shakespeare play. And oh yeah, Nick, my big one in high school was I conducted the band. I was in high school. I was about my junior year, and it was all the kids were there. It was a packed house in the auditorium, and they said we're going to draw somebody from the audience to conduct the band, and everybody knew me as a class clown. It was fixed. It was a rigged thing to go, row 32, seat K, and they drew it. They knew I was sitting there. They had me playing, and they drew it, and they called me up. I went on stage. I conducted Pop Goes the Weasel. I did it. I clicked my heels and I did a pratfall. I brought the house down. That was a big event, really. You had to be there, but it killed the house. And Nick, I'm sure you know this is a guy. We've all gone through it. There was a girl I had a huge crush on. And after the show, all the girls were crowding around me. They made a big circle there, and I saw the girl looking at that. So that really made my day. I saw the girl I had a crush on, unrequited love. She saw the girls around me, so that really made me feel good. Yeah. And then, Nick, of course, all the influences, I'm not necessarily me doing it, but the Three Stooges I was into since I was about 4 years old. Steve and I were talking about it. I started watching the Three Stooges when I was literally like 4 or 5 in kindergarten. The
Oh yeah.
Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. All these guys had a huge influence on me. They made me love comedy. Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, and I go, that's
Oh
what I love.
wow.
Not that I'm in
Yeah.
their league, but these are the guys that, it's like any baseball player, they see Babe Ruth and Joe
Right.
DiMaggio and
Yeah.
Ty Cobb, and they aspire to that.
I can understand what you mean with that one, and it makes sense that the Three Stooges were an early influence.
Yeah.
So what I would ask you here is, do you prefer more Shemp or Curly?
Oh, please. Curly's my favorite comedian of all time, period. The comedian that's made me laugh the most is Curly. Shemp is not a throwaway. People think, oh, if you like Curly, you hate Shemp. I don't hate Shemp. He
No,
gave
I
me
don't
some
either.
good laughs, but
Yeah.
Curly was an artist. Curly was an
Yeah.
aesthetic art. There was nothing aesthetic about Shemp. Curly was aesthetic in the sense Chaplin was. If you look at some of his moves, he was an aesthetic ballet dancer, Curly. He was a fat guy, but he was very graceful.
Right.
Like Jackie Gleason, Fatty Arbuckle. These were very graceful men,
Right.
even though they were
Yeah.
big, obese guys. But Shemp was like a sloppy comedian. He was just all over the map. But he had some funny lines, and he'd throw out these corny lines off the side. So he made me laugh too sometimes. But the Curly ones are the classics.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
So I totally agree with you. I think, in some ways the classic lineup is always the best. And I mean,
yeah.
yeah,
In the
what,
movies too, by the way. Just
yeah,
getting into some of the movies, Nick. Steve
yeah.
and I were talking again. Why do they do sequels to these great films? Why was there Grease
I
2?
have, I
Why
have
do you
no
do
idea.
Oh God? We were talking about a great, beautiful movie. Oh God is one of those beautiful movies ever. And they
Right.
do two terrible sequels. Why do they do that? And the answer is obviously the buck. The
Right.
movie makers want to make the gelt, but it's horrible for the artist. The artists want to make a great product, move on to a new one. Right, that's what writers are for. They create new stuff. But it's kind of like you want to piggyback onto this great thing and try to, parasite yourself off and make more money off it. Greece is like this cash cow. They had that horrible series, The Rise of the Pink Ladies, earlier this year. I mean, it was so lame, so incredibly bad. But, they're still trying to milk Greece after 45 years.
Now, after 45 years, I mean, why do you think it's such a legacy? I mean, why do you think it still holds up?
Well, Steve and I were watching it about we watched it 2 or 3 months ago, and we were both kind of down. We were both going through that kind of down period, and we watched it. And we both felt great. It's like it's one of the ultimate feel good movies. You just watch it, and it's such a feel good movie. The music, the characters, everything about everything beautiful. But when you have a classic, you know this, Nick. Everything comes together. The Wizard
Right.
of Oz, Citizen Kane, Grease. These are all time classics, and the script is obviously where you start. You got to have a great script. The actors, the direction, the cinematography, the little nuances, everything goes good in it, and Grease is just one of those things. Everything came together. Yeah, it was just a beautiful thing. Of course, John and Olivia carried it. There's no question. They were the
Right.
core of it. But Randall Kleiser he was my first director, and he was a wonderful, super great guy director. The songs are unbelievable. The soundtrack is unreal. Every song's beautiful. My favorite's Grease Lightning, but every song Grease hits.
Yeah, we have one of our co-hosts, Dan, who actually he was in the Grease play in high school.
Mm-hmm.
You listen to some of our episodes, I believe he mentioned it, but he was one of the Grease dancers,
Okay.
during the main Grease Lightning song, and he's doing that, and he punched the cardboard car and accidentally punched one of the stage lights.
Oh,
You just hear
the
that.
car was Grease
There
Lightning, you
you
mean?
go, Grease Lightning,
Oh,
boom.
oh, I see. Oh.
And he tells it way better than I do.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
again, a play you screw up and you screw up. A movie, obviously, you just do take two. A movie,
right,
if you
yeah,
screw up as bad, you
yeah,
can have your pants unzipped and everything comes out. If you just do okay, take two. But in a play, you're right. Play, you're stuck. You screw up, you screw
right.
up.
Yeah, I think they just played it off and just kept going, and he just limped
Yeah,
off
yeah.
stage. He tells the story way better than I do.
Uh-huh.
He said we were first and favorite directors here. What was it that made it so memorable for you when you were on that set? I mean, was there any big memories?
Well, it was, Nick, it was my first film, and like your first lover. Everybody has your first lover. Everybody remembers their first lover, the first
Yeah,
time, with their lover. They always remember that. Their first boyfriend, their first girlfriend. You always remember that. I don't drive, but everybody remembers their first car. You remember your first
yeah,
grade teacher. And Grease was my first film. I lucked out. Nick, a lot of stars, you look the biggest stars, and their first film was like this horrible turkey. I think,
right,
it'll be something like, okay, let's say Travolta, for example. He did a film called The Devil's Rain. Nobody
right,
knows, and he had one line, blasphemer, and he
right.
played the creep. But my first film was a classic. I lucked out, and it was Randall's first film too. Believe it or not, that was Randall's first film. He did that great of a job, and it was his very first movie. So you always remember your first, and it was a joy from beginning to end. That people ask me, what was it like doing Grease? And I go,
Yeah.
do you remember the greatest part of your life, the funnest, greatest part of your life you've ever been to? And I go, imagine going to that party every day for 2 months, and that's what it was like. It was like every day going to set was like going to a party. I
Okay.
mean, I loved all the cast. John and Olivia couldn't have been nicer. I loved Randall. I loved the crew. I loved all the extras were wonderful. All the dancers were just lovely, nice people. There wasn't one, movies are like work. You go to a job and you're working with a dick, and you don't want to go to work because of this one guy. And
Right.
a movie you can have, like, let's say there's 100 people in the movie, and you have this one annoying person. And I always go, it's like a person taking a piss in a big swimming pool. It ruins it. You take a piss and this one guy urinates and it ruins the pool. It ruins the fun of the swimming pool. And that's what it is on a movie. And I'm sure that's what it is for people with work. This is what I tell people, though. When you have a regular job and you work with a dick or a jerk, you're stuck. But on a
Right.
movie, you do it for a couple weeks and you're gone. So you kind of just put up with them and you move on. You never see them again. That's why I feel sorry for my friends. And they go, my boss is a jerk or my
Yeah.
coworker's a jerk, because you're stuck, unfortunately.
Wow, man. Wow, I mean, I never really thought about it that way. And when you did that iconic character of Eugene, I mean, one of the things that I kind of noticed looking through some of the movies is, you kind of some of your roles seem to be similar. And
Yeah.
but you seem to really just embrace that character. And I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of people really, as we've interviewed some who really just want to try to get out of that role,
Right.
or get out of it doing something else, like the an actor who's always wanted to, like Matthew McConaughey, wanted to stop doing rom-coms and wanted to do something different.
Uh-huh.
What is it with you that where you wanted to go to a point where it seems like you don't take yourself as seriously, but it's like you dive right into the craft?
Yeah, I'm not an actor in the sense that Matthew is. Of course, he's a great actor. The
Right.
wonderful actors, Bogart, Jimmy Cagney, and of course, De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, Paul Newman. They're great. So they can play any kind of role. I'm more of a stock comedian, like the ones I know. Chaplin plays the same role. Not that I'm in the league of these guys, but Chaplin, Jerry Lewis,
Yeah.
Bob Hope, they always pretty much play the same character, and that's me. I'm not an actor in the sense I'm a comedian. I'm a comic actor or a comedian, not in the sense that I can play another kind of character. I mean, people have said, if you ever wanted to try a straight, well, maybe I could do it. I could probably do it, but I had no desire to. I just think I have my little niche, and I'm good at my niche. Nobody can play my character better than me. He's a nerdy goofball. I based him on there's a lot of Jerry Lewis, early Jerry Lewis in him, and also Nick Daffy Duck. As I was a kid, I worshipped Daffy Duck, and you see that in my character. Hey, you guys, what are you doing here? Da, 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 da. And you see me Dexter's Laboratory, his Mandark.
Right.
Daffy Duck. Yeah, Daffy Duck was a huge influence on me. His cartoons kill me. He's my favorite cartoon character by far, and I loved him since I was a kid, and I based so much of my character on him. I never got a chance to meet Mel Blanc to thank him.
That just kind of blew my mind, because then I could see this now.
Yeah.
They say, like, is there a particular role where it's like you saw something and you said Daffy Duck would be really good here?
Just that I love the character. I thought, have you ever, I think everybody, we all have our favorite movies. And I think we all have favorite characters. You fall in love with a character. And in those cartoons, I just fell in love with them. I mean, the Warner Brothers cartoons we all know are the greatest cartoons ever. And, and I love Bugs Bunny, makes me laugh all the time. He's funny. Foghorn Leghorn makes me laugh. Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote make me laugh. Porky Pig's once in a long while. But, the generic ones are funny. The frog that, sings, that's a funny one. The Warner Brothers cartoons are great. But Daffy Duck was the one that hit, that knocked me out. It's like a girl, a woman fall in love with a man, or a man with a woman. It's just your subjective taste. I like a woman with da da da, and this one's me. And John Lennon fell in love with Yoko Ono. We look at Yoko Ono, we go, she's a loser, she has no talent, blah blah blah. Not to be mean, no offense to Yoko, but you look at her and you go, this guy could have any woman in the world, and he falls in love with that. But to him, she was a queen. She was the most beautiful, talented woman in the world. That's how he saw her, and that's subjectively how we see it, and that's how we see movies. Have you ever, Nick, you see a movie, you go, this is a great movie, and another guy, ho-hum, they don't like it. I'll go, Tombstone's the greatest movie. They go, oh, I didn't like Tombstone. I go, did we see the same movie? Are you serious?
Right.
And, I've met people over here who didn't like Grease. We had a waitress the other day. Steve and I went out to a place called Delaney's. We were eating, and a very nice waitress. She liked the Polar Express, and I did like Grease. No, I didn't like Grease. She was very blunt. I never liked Grease. I just didn't like it. And my old roommate Freddie, he didn't. Now, interestingly, after about 45 years, he went with me to premiere of Grease, my friend Freddie, and he hated it for 45 years. And he just saw it recently. He said, you know what? This is a good movie. So that kind of proves you can change your viewpoint too. You can like hate a movie and like it, or turn around, maybe like it and dislike it. It's all, it's all in your head. It's all subjectively in your aesthetic mind.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you mean by that. I mean, for Movie Theater Time Machine, we've done almost 400 movies at this point.
Right.
Over 6 years, and there's some that we've brought that were childhood favorites.
Right.
I'm one that other co-hosts brought up, we should watch The Princess Bride.
Right.
It wasn't my favorite. It was one of those, it's just like, okay, wow. I'm like, okay, it just didn't stick as the
Nick, do you know the classics, Nick? The classics in the 30s and all, don't back to go.
Yeah.
Do you go back that far and all that? All the classics? I had heard this one, Nick. Steve and I go to the library, and Steve is the greatest guy. He rents me out, and he gets me all my favorites. Hard Day's Night, Tombstone, my favorite movies of all time. And there was one I heard about, Ernest Lubitsch directed, Trouble in Paradise. And I go, Trouble in Paradise. I finally found the Holy Grail. I've been looking for this for months. And I watched it a couple days ago, and I was bored out of my mind. I thought it was so lame. I got nothing out of it. Why is this called a classic? I get nothing out of it. So, what people regard as a classic, it might not be in your mind a classic.
I agree with you. And I mean, there's one that we did many years ago, was a movie that I saw. I revered this as one of the best movies of all time. I couldn't remember what the title was, but it lived in a pre-internet world where I'd run up to my friends, and I saw it on the Sci-Fi Channel. Years back. It was this guy who goes to this high school. He's not, he's an out-of-towner. He has to make friends, and the only thing he can get into is the science club, and he drinks prune juice he found in the wall, and then gets telekinetic abilities. And we're like,
that's a weird one.
Right. They're like, oh yeah, this is the weirdest movie I've ever seen, and it's on YouTube, dude, and it's a movie called Zapped Again.
Okay.
And, my wife found it, and she said, oh, this is gonna be it, because that's one I've been like revering for years. Finally reviewed it, and I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
It has laughs, but I mean, it's just, and I get what you mean, because there are some that we've done. about a year and a half ago or so, my grandmother passed away. We did some of her favorite movies, just to kind of, get through the grieving process. And luckily, the co-hosts were very, very willing for me to do that. Uh,
Mhm.
there were
The
some
grieving process over what? I'm sorry.
when my grandmother passed away.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, Nick, my mom passed away last year, and Steve, yeah, I think about her every day. That was,
I
yeah. So
I'm
I
so
still
sorry,
haven't been able to
man.
pay my respects. She passed away. Okay, I was in the hospital, and I couldn't get
Right.
out to pay my respects and go to her funeral. So I still haven't seen her grave yet. I want to go and pay my respects. It's one of my
Seriously?
bucket list, my goals. I got to get back to Maryland to see her.
Wow. Oh man, I hope you do. I mean, you're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
far away. I mean, it's a day's drive, but
yeah. I'll
should
get up
be.
there.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the movies that came out was Liza Minnelli's I think it was Cabaret, I believe.
Okay,
It was,
that's kind of a good musical. It's not my favorite, but I have a friend who loves it.
yeah, I like it. I liked it, but it was one of those that was one of her top favorite. Oh my gosh, you have to see this. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it was it just took a while, man. It took a while.
Totally. I had that. You know what I had that with, Nick? I had it with Kelly's Heroes. My friend Paulie, the greatest movie you got to see, Kelly's Heroes. It's better than the Dirty Dozen. And I didn't get into Kelly's Heroes, whereas I love the Dirty Dozen. It's one of my
Yeah,
favorites. And Kelly's Heroes didn't do anything for me.
yeah.
It's just all subjective taste.
And I think you're right. And I mean, it is really subjective. So I mean, like with the long career that you've had, like what is it that makes a classic though? I mean, even though it's a very subjective world, what do you think makes a classic movie versus
Well,
a
again, it's something that people can associate with. They can associate with the characters.
Mhm.
It moves them. If it's a musical, it makes you feel good and wonderful. If it's a drama, it makes you cry. If it's a comedy, it
Yeah.
makes you laugh. And you like characters. Like I saw, I was watching Steven Spielberg was interviewed by it was Dick Cavett or one of these old interviews, David Frost, and Spielberg was doing interviews in these days. And
Yeah.
they said, what went wrong with 1941? And he had an interesting insight, which I never heard. And it's interesting. He goes, there were no likable characters. There was no real characters that you really liked in that movie, really
Right.
nice characters. And I think, Grease, of course, everybody's rooting for Danny and Sandy, the star-crossed lovers.
Mhm.
Polar Express, of course, they're nice characters. They're four really nice characters. Know-It-All is kind of dicey, but the other three are nice. And Know-It-All turns good in the end. The Wizard of Oz, these are four really nice characters. Laurel and Hardy, as dumb as they are, Oliver Hardy said, they said, what made Laurel and Hardy great? And he goes, these were two nice guys. They were two
Yeah.
really nice guys. They were trying hard and they screwed up, and the one guy was dumb and the other guy thought he was superior and he was actually dumber than the dumb guy. But he goes, they were really nice guys and that's why people like them so much.
Wow, man. Wow. You hit a point. You
Yeah.
hit the point there.
41 it's a mixed bag. 41, it's got a great cast, It didn't quite, the gags aren't that funny. I don't know. It just missed. Steve had a great realization. He goes, if Bob Zemeckis had done it, it might have been better. I always
Mm,
go, they go, who's your favorite director? And of course, I've worked for Spielberg. That's like saying to a baseball player, you play with Babe Ruth. Who's your favorite? Of course, Babe Ruth's the greatest player. And they go, no, it was such and such. But Babe Ruth, you
right.
play with Babe Ruth. I was directed by Spielberg, and Steven Spielberg is the greatest director ever. Saying Steven Spielberg was a great director, it's like saying, Shakespeare was a good writer. Of course he is. Everybody
Right.
knows that. And he was great. But I preferred Bob Zemeckis because Zemeckis was more of a comedy director.
Mm,
I did his first film called I Want to Hold Your Hand. I don't know if you saw that, but it's a
I do
Beatles
know
film.
of it. No.
Yeah,
Any
you have to
movies
stream
from
that. That
that?
was Zemeckis' first film, and it was the first film Steven Spielberg ever produced. We did it in '78. It was about four kids going to see the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show in '64 when they
Oh,
come to
okay.
America.
Yeah, yeah.
So definitely stream that. It's a great movie. I think it's the best thing I ever did. And it was because of Zemeckis. And Bob remembered me all these years later, and he wrote a role for me in Polar Express. The know-it-all character I play in Polar Express, he's not in the
Right.
book. He doesn't exist. But Bob just
Right.
created this character, and he
Yeah,
goes, Eddie, I want you to play this. And he's the greatest director. He's like a father to me. He knows just how to direct me.
wow, man. I mean, is there any really big memories from that movie? I mean, why is it from 1978 is still your favorite?
From I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, my proudest thing is the Beatles saw it, except John, I never found out, but I know Paul saw it. And somebody said, Paul, which is your favorite of the Beatles movies? And he goes, I like that Ringo Klaus film. And that was me, Ringo Klaus. That's who I play. So Paul McCartney saw it. George saw it and he said it was a good historical film. And Ringo, I've got two stories. Ringo, I read in one of the tabloids said Ringo and Paul saw it and they both liked it. But then another guy told me, he said Ringo saw it and he goes, he didn't like it. So Ringo, I don't know if he liked it or not. And John, it's one of my goals. I wanted to know if he did see it. I'm thinking he did because John was like, off in those years. It was 78.
Right.
So he was like not doing
Yeah.
anything.
That
He was
was
a
the
houseman. So I'm
breadbasket
thinking he
years.
might have gone into a theater and seen it, but I never found out if he saw it. But, working with Spielberg, Steven and I were friends and we'd be around on the set. And Nick, I got my first line put in the movie. Again, this sounds like a nothing line now because the joke's been done a million times now, but I think this was the first time it was ever used. There was a line in the movie where I'm in the movie. Do you know Dick Miller, the character actor?
Yes, I do.
He did, yeah, a lot of Roger Cornfield. He did like
Yeah.
300 movies, but he's the
Yeah.
cop in the movie. And he
Yeah.
goes, "Now I got you, little shit." And then I go, "I'm going to say, who you calling little?" It's like and then Steven broke up and he goes, "That's funny." And then Steven calls Zemeckis over, goes, "Eddie's going to say this." And then I told him Bob broke up and they put it in. I think that was the first time that joke was used, but now it's been used,
Oh,
now I got you
yeah.
disgusting horror. And you go, "Who you calling disgusting?"
Yeah.
in other words, they focus on the adjective and not the mean noun, but that
Right.
joke was put in. So that was the first line I ever wrote in a movie. So I was proud of that. And he just captured me. If you watch I Want to Hold Your Hand, you see me doing Daffy Duck. Again, you'll see me really doing my character, doing really good slapstick,
Yeah.
slapstick stuff. And it's a wonderful, great movie. So yeah, please stream that. You can easily get it on DVD or stream it, I'm sure, anywhere.
I'm going to look it up. I'm
Yeah.
honestly this is you're feeding me more than I need to, and I'm a movie buff anyway. Yeah, I've obviously.
Yeah, yeah. It's I Want to Hold Your Hand, WANNA, not I want. The Beatles record is I Want to Hold Your Hand, even though
Yeah.
they're singing I Want to Hold Your Hand. It's called I Want to, but this movie's called I Want to Hold Your Hand, WANNA, Hold Your Hand.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm in with that, man. I mean,
Yeah,
so I mean, you got the Daffy Duck style character.
right.
What is it for? Like, I teach a lot of it on the side. I teach a lot of courses about perseverance. I mean, what is it that keeps you going?
Well,
Literally.
in the early days, and this is purely pragmatic. This is purely pragmatic and practical. In my early days, and this is the trouble with a lot of actors, it's purely economical. In the early days, you got to support yourself. No actor's going to, actors, as you know, actors, I think maybe like 1% work, if that, because there's like literally
Right.
millions of actors out there, and there's a few hundred or maybe 1,000 roles or whatever. It's just
Right.
sheer numbers. You can be, you could be Jimmy Stewart or Jimmy Cagney or Bogart, and maybe the casting director doesn't like you or something. Maybe you remind her of his ex-husband or whatever, your ex-wife. And you have to get the job, so you have to keep going. My dad saved my bacon. My dad, in these days, this was 1975 through 77, before I got Grease. I was 2 years, and my dad would send me $400 every month. And
Wow.
that kept me going. In those days, Nick, it's not a lot now, but in those days, that paid my rent and it paid my groceries, and he kept me going. A lot of actors, want to get in and they can't. So whenever an actor, they'll say, like, what do I do? What do I do when I get in showbiz? And the first thing I'll go to is make sure you have money saved. Make sure you have a nest egg, a few $1,000s at least, because you're going to need that. And of course, you're going to have to buy pictures besides that. But just to keep feeding yourself and having a place to stay, you got to have the money. So that kept me going economically. And then I got Grease and I started rolling. I got a low budget film called Laser Blast. I don't know if you ever saw that, but they did a
I
great
know
thing
that
on
one.
Laser
Yeah.
Blast. Mystery Science Theater 3000 did a satire Laser Blast,
Yeah, I
which is
remember
funnier than
that.
the
Yeah.
movie. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
way better than the movie. And then I got
Yeah.
a Want to Hold Your Hand. And then I got 1941 and things started rolling.
Wow, man. Wow. I
Yeah.
mean, so there's.
And you have to want it real bad, Nick. I had a guy, one of my early handlers' name was Gabe. He was like an early manager of mine. And he took me aside. He goes, "Do you want it really?" I was just getting started. And he goes, "This is what he told me." And I think this is kind of true. He goes, "Do you want it really bad?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, No. He goes, "Do you want it really, really bad? Do you want to make it really bad?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "You have to have that." He goes, "You have to have that fire that you want to make it really
Right.
bad. That keeps
Yeah.
you going." And that kept me going. There was this desire. They asked, "Do you know baseball? Do you know Joe DiMaggio?"
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe DiMaggio was married to Marilyn Monroe. He was like the
Yeah.
greatest baseball player of all time. But he
Right.
said he had a famous quote, and I think it applies to an actor. And Nick, it probably applies to everybody in any profession. That's great. He goes, "I used to burn to play." He said, "I used
Yeah.
to burn inside. I wanted to get on that field and I would burn." And I think, great
Yeah.
artists, Picasso, burn. I think Shakespeare probably burned to write,
Yeah.
playwrights. And,
Yeah.
probably the great doctors, Einstein, or the
Yeah.
great men in history, the great women in history, they
Yeah.
probably had that burning desire and that made them great.
Yeah. I had a mentor of mine at one point who used to use this quote. He said, "When you'll succeed when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe."
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you
Exactly.
if you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then if your
Yeah.
head's in the water and you do that, then you will have that drive and keep
Yeah,
going.
there's something inside. And I think Marilyn
Yeah.
Monroe had that.
Yeah.
I think, Chaplin had that, Buster Keaton. I think they had that. And then that's what did it.
Yeah, and I think even with Buster Keaton as well is because he really didn't know anything else, and he's
Yeah,
like,
Buster Keaton was raised that way.
What
And same
else
with
am I
Chaplin.
going to
Chaplin
do?"
was pretty much raised
Yeah,
on stage.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, Buster Keaton was raised by circus performers too.
right.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
that's how his name Buster came to be. Uh,
right.
and it came to be. But I mean, I think, when it was at the birth of an industry that nobody knew what was going to happen.
Right.
No, nobody knew what was going
I
to
was talking to
happen.
Steve the other day about how we're in the midst, we're in the early days, literally, because movies have been going for, a little over 100 years, 120 years or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
And books, go back to Shakespeare or whatever, the 14th
right.
century. And these, Shakespeare's the classics,
Mhm.
Milton or who the great, and let alone the philosophers, Socrates and all, they were captured in books. Socrates, Plato, all
Yeah,
these great minds, their stuff has been written in books. Books have been the art form,
yeah,
art or I don't know. I guess Galileo and the great minds would not be art, but the great writings and all were preserved in books. Now we
yeah,
have movies. These movies will be looked on in hundreds or thousands of years. They're like books. They're recorded now, and we have DVDs. You can record on computers, and they'll always be there. So you have this constant record of what's going on. Whereas all these great artists, imagine the thousands of years, Nick, that we've lost these great. Imagine the past. There's must have been chaplains and beautiful women like Marilyn Monroe and guys as good as Buster Keaton, but we'll never see them. We just have
right.
recordings from like 1900 on.
Yeah. I mean, how lucky we are to live in a time like this,
Yeah, yeah.
where we can do that.
Technology. Our society, technologically, we're growing and growing and getting smarter and smarter. Whereas intellectually, philosophically, we're getting stupider and stupider. The world seems to be getting dumber and dumber. But
Yeah.
technologically, we're giants.
Yeah. I mean, so what do you think is like one of the things that's next, where you have the industry changing, where even in my own lifetime, I'm just knocking on the door of 40 myself, you
Oh,
know.
you're a kid. I'm
Yeah.
66, Nick. I did Grease when I was 20, so that was 45 years ago.
Oh gosh. I mean,
Yeah.
when you have that, I mean, going from, like you said, Betamax to VHS tapes
Mhm.
to, from over the air to theaters, and
Yeah,
now,
and all you do is push a button on a computer now. Any movie you
yeah,
ever want to see, you
everything
push
is
button. Let
instantaneous.
alone you don't even have to pay. You go to YouTube's got almost everything. YouTube's
Yeah,
got like every Beatles concert. You can just I want
right,
to see the Beatles play Germany in '66, and the concert's right there. Are you serious?
right, yeah,
The
yeah.
stuff
I
you'd
mean,
kill for. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of Elvis. We would
yeah,
like to see Elvis was kind of pre-filmed. There's only very spotty stuff of Elvis on site. You got to see that magic guy, and unfortunately, we missed a lot of that.
yeah,
To see Elvis in the '50s must have been so dynamite to see a full Elvis concert.
yeah. I can't disagree with you. I absolutely agree. I agree with you
Yeah,
100%. I
he
mean,
started it all. Without
yeah,
Elvis, there wouldn't have been the Beatles. No
no.
question.
Now, I one of our hosts is actually a very big Elvis fan, and she introduced me to quite a bit of it. I mean, what do you think is next? What do you think is next for the industry?
Well, unfortunately, now they're getting into this AI stuff, which
Mm,
they're saying this is what I hear. And again, we're talking about technology is kind of like we've created Frankenstein. Supposedly, with AI, they can get your voice and they can create a character, and they don't even need you. That's kind of supposedly the strike with the current strike, which has gone on like 130 days or whatever. Which I love my writer friends. God, these writers are so as you know, writers are the unsung heroes of movies.
true.
The actors get all the credit and the directors win the awards. And I guess writers win the awards too, but writers are the unsung heroes. The script, the whole Grease wouldn't have happened unless these guys wrote Grease, or
Right.
Casablanca or Citizen Kane or City
Yeah.
Lights. The
Yeah.
writers, with the writers, I guess was Chaplin, but that's an exception. But the writers, we need them so much, and I so hope they settle this straight. These poor guys,
I
that
really do too.
yeah, God bless them.
Yeah, I really
But
do
anyway,
too.
like I was saying, AI, and CGI, they say you can create a character. They could do a movie now. They could take, Jimmy Cagney, let's say Jimmy Cagney, and do a Jimmy Cagney movie, and get Cagney's voice and make his body on a computer and make him move. Oh, you dirty rat, da, 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 and have a Jimmy Cagney movie. It's kind of
Yeah.
scary.
I think it is, and I mean there's a movie that was starring Robin Wright. It's called The Congress
Mhm.
that deals with that particular future. And I mean, I think, I don't want to dwell too much on that, and I know it's something that's difficult, but I want to just have a little fun with this one.
Mhm.
Is there a movie that you believe, and there's no wrong answer on this,
Uh-huh.
you believe you would have had a fun time in that role? going
Oh,
right.
there was
Give
one a couple days ago. There's a couple of mistakes I made in my career. We all have regrets.
Yeah.
These people. I always go. These people that say I have no regrets in life. I go, have you really lived? Are you serious?
Right.
How
Yeah.
can you
Yeah.
live a
Yeah.
lifetime and not have regrets? There was this one beautiful. Just to get up the subject for a minute, there was this one gorgeous girl, and I had her in the bag. She was so ready to go, and for some reason, I didn't go out with her. And this beautiful girl. This was like 40 years ago, and to this day, I regret not going out with this beautiful, gorgeous girl. She was right there. She was right there. Giving herself to me, and for some reason, I didn't go out. And I look back and I regret that moment. But anyway, my biggest one of my regrets, not my biggest, but there was one called Rock and Roll High School. I didn't do that. And it wasn't my choice. Believe it or not, I was busy. It was 79. I was doing 1941, Midnight Madness, which was Michael J. Fox's first film, and a terrible movie called Stiegler and Stiegler. I did in San Francisco, totally forgotten Turkey. That's the movie I met my ex-wife on. It was a roller skating disco film, but I was too busy. And I was supposed to play the Clint Howard role in Rock and Roll High School. They wrote the role in for me, but I couldn't do it. Same thing with Meatballs. The role of Spaz in Meatballs was written for me, but I couldn't do it because I was too busy in those days. I was a young hot actor in those days, and I was too busy. Now, my biggest regret in TV, I'll tell you this is a true story.
Sure.
And this will come back to haunt you. This is the rule I've learned in 66 years. Like this is what I've learned. Don't be afraid. Just jump in, even if you're terrified. You got to do it. But they had written a role for me on Mork and Mindy. They wrote a role, Eddie, and I was supposed to work with Robin Williams, and I chickened out. I literally go, oh my God, Robin Williams, I would have been overwhelmed. A movie I can kind of confront stars, because movies you get used to them and you do take up. But a live TV show with an audience, and it's hard for me to memorize lines. And Robin Williams with quick mind and his ad libs.
Yeah,
I told my agent, I go, turn him down. I can't do it.
Yeah.
And my agent was a nice guy named Bernie. He goes, okay, I'll turn it down. He was a very nice guy. And I've always looked back on that. It was something I regretted. I like chickened out. It's kind of like I should have jumped in the water and done it. I could have met Robin Williams. And here's the postscript to it, Nick. I told that story on my Facebook page, and I wrote about it, and a guy sent me a PM that made me cry. He goes, Eddie, I knew Robin Williams. I worked with him on Mork and Mindy. He goes, if Robin Williams knew you were scared or were having a problem, he would have made sure you were comfortable. He would have got you cue cards. He said if he knew you had stage fright, he would have cleared the audience. He would have made sure you were safe. He would have done take after take, and he would have bent over backwards to make sure you were comfortable. And when I read that, I almost cried, because I realized what a sweet guy Robin is. I'm sure it was true. But the lesson I learned in life is you got to take the risk sometimes. It's not necessarily good to always be safe. And in those days I was young, and I should have done it. I would have been scared out of my wits, but I should have done it. And I always regret that.
Yeah. Imagine a time, if you will, like if there was a universe where you could jump into a real classic film, like would you imagine yourself in, let's say, Jimmy Stewart's Harvey?
No, I wouldn't, not in a drama role, but I would do it for comedies. I mean, if I would come back and be somebody, and this is my own metaphysical thoughts. You're going to laugh your head off at this, okay? But I've always believed I'm telling you this for the first time. You're going to laugh, okay? But this is my metaphysical heart. I've always believed I was Curly Howard in another life. I believe I was that guy, because I felt things. I've watched the films, and I felt so strongly that I was there and I did that thing. I don't know why. And maybe it's totally wrong, but I've always believed I was him in another life. He died in 1952 and I was born in 57.
Yeah.
But that's my deep and philosophical life. I would love to be him more than anybody else. He was my supreme hero. He was, if I could have been anybody in history, I would have done him. Now, sadly, I don't know if you know his history. He was in bad pain. When he was a kid, he shot himself accidentally in the foot, and you'll see in the movies he kind of limped. So he lived his life in pain, and he died. He was only 48. He died a young man, but he left this legacy of like. He left this legacy of like 80 really good films, really hilarious films that have stuck through the ages, gone down in history.
Oh, God,
I think he's the greatest. He makes, whoever makes you laugh, you go, who was the greatest comedian? And you go, like I'm on Facebook. There's a Turner Classic Movies page. I don't know if you're on it.
I am.
But yeah, people batter and they go, what was the best movie? What was the best black and white movie ever made? And I was going, when you say that, you go, in other words, you're saying, what was your favorite? It's the same thing. What is your favorite film? Is the best film. So for me, the best black and white film was A Hard Day's Night, the Beatles movie, because that's my favorite movie of all time. So to me, that was the best movie ever made. So that's kind of answering his question. And they go, who was the greatest comedian of all time? And they go, well, Curly wasn't an artist like Charlie Chaplin. He didn't do pathos. And I know, but to me, he made me laugh the most. So he was the greatest comedian in my heart. It's like, to you, your wife or your girlfriend, you go, who's the most beautiful woman in the world? And I'm sure you go, she's the most beautiful woman in the world, because she's in your heart. And a woman, my husband's the handsomest man in the world, because that's how you feel. Aesthetics is totally subjective. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and aesthetics is all that way.
Dang, man. Wow. Eddie Deezen is giving me some knowledge today. Give me a lot to think about. This is great.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there anyone that you would have loved to work with or meet?
In history,
Yeah, in history
uh,
or actors or whoever.
oh, sure, definitely. I would have been honored. Chaplin, of course, Charlie Chaplin. I would love to meet. I'm more into actors than actresses. I have three favorite actresses. Mae West, I love, and I still got to see Dirty Blonde, that PBS special. I was in the hospital, I didn't get to see it. We have it on order in the library. Marilyn Monroe, of course, I love.
Yeah,
She's the most incredible person because I've never seen anybody who loved the camera as much and was in such rapport with the camera. That
right.
you look at these styles pictures, and she never took a bad picture. Every
No,
picture of her, she's gorgeous and she's fascinating. I
yeah,
found one Nick online, and she's praying. Marilyn Monroe's like fervently praying, and I go, Marilyn Monroe praying, but it's a beautiful, touching picture of Marilyn Monroe praying. She's not this bombshell, but she's like this woman in pain praying, and it's beautiful. And I love Natalie Wood. My
yeah.
favorite chick flick is Splendor in the Grass. It makes me cry every time. And the final scene of Splendor in the Grass gets me every time. I love that movie. And
Awesome.
anyway, to answer your question, I would love to work with the Three Stooges. I would love to work with the Marx Brothers. I
Oh
love
wow.
Groucho Marx. I love Harpo. They're two of
Yeah.
my great heroes. Laurel and Hardy, I would love to have worked with. I would love to have met him. You know what I was thinking of, an interchange thing I thought of at lunch, Nick? This is an interchange in history. The Marx Brothers, okay, Zeppo.
Yep.
And Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. I thought Dean Martin could have been Zeppo in the Marx Brothers films, and Zeppo could have been the straight man for Jerry Lewis. They could have exchanged, and it would have been the same thing. They're both like these handsome leading men. And Dean was kind of wooden in the Jerry Lewis films. Like Dean became a great actor in Rio Bravo, and
He did. Yeah.
Career. And
Yeah.
what was the other one he did? The Young Lions with Montgomery Clift. He's a great actor. But in the
Yeah.
Martin and Lewis days, he's kind of just a wooden straight man, and he would come out and sing a couple songs. And that's kind of what Zeppo was. He was like this wooden straight man who would sing. And I thought Dean could have been the fourth Marx brother, and Zeppo could have been Zeppo, Marx, and Jerry Lewis in the 50s. I think it would have been the same thing.
Holy cow, man.
Yeah,
That's a really good way to think of it. That's really
yeah, yeah.
wow. I was thinking of Dean Martin and Duck Soup.
Yeah.
That
I mean, it would have been a waste of his talent. We didn't see until Dean split up with Jerry. We didn't really see how incredibly talented he was and how funny he
right.
was. And then, of course, we had the Dean Martin show, and he was a riot in that.
Yeah.
But in the Martin and Lewis films, he's just a total straight man. He's kind of a bland character, and
Yeah.
you watch it, and he'll occasionally throw him a bone, but he's not really that funny. It was
Yeah.
because Jerry was so dynamic, it was all
Right.
thrown to Jerry. Whereas Laurel
Right.
and Hardy, they were both funny. The
Yeah.
Marx Brothers, they were all three funny. The Three Stooges. Larry was a little lesser, but they were all three funny.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite heroes, one of my comedy heroes of all time is Harvey Korman.
Harvey Korman was great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Blazing
Harvey,
Saddles,
yeah.
yeah.
Harvey
Headley.
Korman, it was
Headley Lamar.
the way that he would play off Tim Conway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, like one of my favorite comedy sketches of all time is The Dentist.
Yes, that's hilarious. Where he kept laughing. Yeah. Yeah.
You know exactly who it is, but when they're Harvey Korman is lying there as the patient, and then Tim Conway as the dentist goes, he grabs the anesthetic and just hits it right, grabs his palm right on his face and starts walking around and starts moving.
Yes.
Hits his leg, and then Harvey has to stand there straight and then starts laughing.
Yeah.
And starts laughing and guiding everybody directly. I mean, to me, that was just, and also at Blazing Saddles, I mean, all he had to do was walk around and just correct people on his name.
Exactly.
Headley, it's just Headley. I mean, that just always got me.
That movie, that's one of the things you say, what makes it classic. That's a classic. Every character in that movie is funny. Every scene is funny. It's one of the most perfect movies ever made. It's such a hilariously funny movie.
Yeah. So where would you, if you got the chance to go into that movie, what would you play? What would you do?
In Blazing Saddles?
Yeah.
If I could have my choice, let me think all the characters. There's obviously I couldn't play Cleavon Little. Let's see, Gene Wilder. I'm not a good enough actor. Gene Wilder is such a great actor. He's so great. Because some of his movies, some of his stuff's pretty serious in that movie. He'll say some serious stuff, and he's like a great actor. Let me see. I'm not sure. Maybe I would just probably be a bit of relief, comedy relief. I can't think of anybody in Blazing Saddles that I would necessarily be. Young Frankenstein, I might have played Igor. I don't know. Maybe I could have hunched up and played Marty Feldman. Maybe I could. I wouldn't have been as good as Marty, but I could have played that maybe. Airplane. I auditioned for Airplane.
Really?
And believe it or not, they had me audition for the Robert Hayes role, which was so stupid. He's like this handsome leading man guy. And,
Yeah.
I was at the audition. It was like crickets, Okay, Elaine, we're going to land this plane. I'm going to fly the plane in at 40,000 feet. And, and they're sitting there saying, why did you have me read for that? I could have done any one of these little bit roles. Just give me a little cameo. It would have been
Yeah.
funny. Yeah. I
Yeah.
auditioned for Animal House. They had me read for Animal House, and it was crickets again. And I think I could have played a funny role in that one. I don't know. I think
Yeah.
I could have played, not John was irreplaceable, but I could have played maybe a little role, Stork or somebody.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, what would, out of all your roles that you've done, if somebody who doesn't know anything about your career, doesn't know anything about it from you, here's a chance for you just to pitch yourself. What are like 3 top movies that you would say that's your best and you would vouch for somebody to go see?
Well, this is one. Okay, this is where I got granted one of my wishes. We all have our bucket list, and
Yep.
I'm Jewish, Nick, and one of my bucket lists was I'm a Christmas nut. I love
Yeah.
sending out Christmas cards. I love buying Christmas presents. I love Christmas. It's my favorite day of the year. I just love it, and I always want to do a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
And they called me in. Bob Zemeckis called me in, and I tested for Polar Express, and I did it. And he wrote the role just for me, so
Yeah.
that would definitely be one because it's a Christmas staple now. It's Christmas classic, and it's shown every Christmas,
Right.
and I'm very proud of that. Grease, I would,
Yeah.
even though Grease had a very small role, just because Grease is such a feel good movie, I just go watch it. Steve and I always say, once in a while you run into a person they haven't seen Grease. There'll be a young kid or whatever. Pretty much every adult has seen Grease, I think, on the planet. But a young kid, we met a young hostess yesterday, and she hadn't seen Grease. We go, you got to see this movie. You'll feel good. So Grease just to feel good. I think
Yeah.
War Games a good one. Just as I have the one good scene where I have only in one scene in War Games, but it's a good movie. It's just a good movie. And Steve and I were talking about at that time in '83, we were scared about war with Russians. You see how the world changed. We were scared that somebody's going to set off a nuclear bomb
Yeah.
and we were going to blow up the planet. And also, it was the early days. The computers in War Games are like as big as a room. Now,
Right.
we have a
Right. Yeah.
computer in
Yeah.
your watch. You have all the stuff in the computers in War Games you can have in your watch now. You can put in on there. That's how technologically we progress. But War Games is a
Oh,
really
here.
good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There
Yeah.
you
It's all
go.
on my phone. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a very funny B. I did so many B movies. If
Yeah.
you know me, I guess you know my credits. There's
Yeah.
one called Midnight Madness. It was Michael J. Fox's first movie. That's a very funny B movie. And that's got, Maggie Roswell is in it, who's in The Simpsons now. She plays one of the roles in The Simpsons. Michael's in it, and you'll see my old pal Pee Wee Herman, whose birthday is today. Pee Wee, that's his first movie. He plays a cowboy in the arcade, and you'll see Pee
Yeah.
Wee in that movie. So that's a B movie I'm very proud of.
Paul Rubens was in that.
Yeah, he's in it. You'll see him in the arcade. Look for the scene in the arcade. He'll come out as a cowboy. He just did one scene.
I'm just playing in my head.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was Paul Rubens, huh?
that's Paul Rubens. That's before he was Pee Wee.
Wow, man.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Cool. Wow.
yeah.
Wow, man. Oh, so I mean, I appreciate that, man, and I know there's other things. Steve asked me. I know one person you always wanted to meet was Henry Winkler.
Yeah, I love Henry. I've been a fan. And the reason I said is, first of all, I'm a huge fan. I love
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite celebrities. I've heard only good things about him.
Right.
Almost every celebrity, there's some dirt on him. He
Right.
did this or da 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 or something.
Yeah.
Henry Winkler, I've heard only good things about, and I'm just a huge fan. He wrote a little book, Nick, in the '70s. It was called Henry Winkler something, and it was one of my favorite books. When I came to Hollywood, I read the book like 5 or 6 times. It was such a beautiful book, and he told his life story. And this is like the early days of Fonzie. And I always wish, why doesn't he write his autobiography? He should write a full autobiography. He's done so many things. He's come so far. It would be a great read. But I love him as a person. I think he's such a mensch. He's such a great guy. And another one that I always wanted to meet is Richard Dreyfuss. The reason I say these two is I've been doing the signing show, the conventions and Comic Cons. I've been doing it for 40 years. I've seen like everybody. I've met Sylvester Stallone, Barbara Eden, William Shatner, all down the list. But I've never done shows with these guys, and they've both done a lot of shows. We've crossed paths, but we've never done the same shows together.
Wow.
So those are the two guys I like to meet most. And Henry Winkler, is one of my supreme heroes. I've always just loved the guy.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah,
Honestly, it's one of my personal ones. I actually met him about just a little under a month ago.
Oh, is that right? What happened?
It was up in Boston. It was at a fan expo, and you said it right. But one of the things that sticks in my brain, we had to check in, where we were because we were up for photo ops. When they said if you want to spend a little time or you want to talk with him, best to go to his booth right now.
Mm-hmm.
Go there, and there's the long list of booths. He's next to William Shatner.
Oh my God. That was a great A show.
Now, here's the deal though. William Shatner's booth is empty.
What? You're kidding?
No, he's sitting there tapping a pen.
Are you serious?
Just wait, he's there. I'm like, but his people are trying to pull people in. Henry Winkler's booth, there's a line that's zigzagged all the way
You're
around.
kidding. That really surprised me because I thought William Shatner was the star. I thought he's like the top celebrity.
Out in Boston, brother. Now in Boston, I mean, I almost said Jimmy Stewart, but Henry Winkler is a graduate at Emerson College.
Okay.
He just, but everybody there just loved him, and it was estimated 10,000 people a day came to see him in the 3 days.
Oh my God! So he couldn't handle it. There's no way he can handle 10,000 people.
So I get there in the front, and I mean, he shakes my hand. He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, Henry Winkler's talking to me. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, I grew up with cerebral palsy and dyslexia and things. And when I learned about how he overcame his dyslexia, I took that blueprint. And I used it to overcome all of my issues and all the things I've done. And I just got a chance to thank him. And I said, it's cliche to say this in front of you, but I gotta say, you taught me how to be cool. And he says, and he goes, "You already are cool." I'm like,
what a nice guy. What a beautiful thing to say. He's a total mensch. He's one I gotta meet. I gotta meet him.
It really is worth it. I mean, he just genuinely was one of the greatest guys. And I mean, I would say, yes, it's definitely, I'm sure there's a convention schedule or something that
I hope I get to do a show with him. I mean, I would do anything. And the same with Richard Dreyfuss, maybe to a lesser extent, but I'm such a huge Jaws fan, and I'm such a huge American Graffiti fan. And he just seems like he's such a wonderful actor in those two movies. And those movies had such a profound effect on me. Jaws, I mean, it's such a beautiful, great movie. And he's played such a great character, Yeah,
I mean, Jaws is a big one here where I live. I live in the town of Fall River, Massachusetts. I mean, was it Martha's Vineyard? Where we filmed is about an hour away from us.
Oh, cool.
So, I mean, it is one of those come July 4th. I mean, it is a very big movie around here.
Yeah. And I worked with Murray, of course, in 1941. Murray was a lovely guy. We're on the Ferris. We spent like 2 months on the Ferris wheel together. Nicest guy ever. He was like a 4-pack-a-day smoker. And Steven had oxygen tanks for him, and we were on we were on this gigantic Ferris wheel, me, Murray, and my dummy, And Steven would have to bring us down. He couldn't breathe, and Steven had these hard times. He'd have to get breaths. He was a fairly old man at that time, and he'd been smoking 4 packs a day for God knows how long, so his lungs were probably so destroyed, So he got through the shoot. He was a total pro, but he couldn't breathe up there a lot of the time.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's a true story.
Holy cow, man. Oh, this is really cool. This is wild, man. Thank you for telling me that. Now,
You want to hear my favorite 1941 story?
Go ahead, man.
Okay, we're on the Ferris wheel, okay? And there's the scene. Did you see 1941?
Yes, I did. Yep.
Okay, there's a scene where we roll off the pier. They shut us down, and we roll off the pier, and that was done with miniatures. But they had to match it. They had the miniatures, and they interspersed it with a real cut of us. So Steven was whipping us around, like we're going up here, and he had the Ferris wheel going full speed. Now, Nick, I get bad motion sickness when I go around in circles, and he was whipping us around, and I started to feel sick, and I said, "Steven, can you please stop?" So I called him to stop it. He let me off. So I'm shaky legged, wobbly legged. I go over. I go, "I feel nauseous." He goes, "Go lay down in my dressing room." So Steven had his beautiful secretary. She walked me to his dressing room. I lay down in his cot. So I'm laying in the cot, and I started to feel nauseous. Nick, I crawled on my hands and knees, literally. I crawled to his toilet, and I threw up. And I go, "Oh my God, I threw up in Steven Spielberg's toilet." I go, "I just threw up in Steven Spielberg's toilet." I go, "This is one of the highlights of my life. This is one of the highlights of my career." And that was my biggest memory of 1941, throwing up in Steven's toilet. my other great memory, Nick, was I was on 1941, and it was lunchtime. And Steven walks by Cass. He goes, "Eddie, you want to go to lunch with us?" And I'm going, "Yeah, I'll go to lunch with Steven Spielberg." What the
right?
I cuss on your show. I go, "What the F?" Of course. So I go, we go to the back of the commissary. I think it was either the MGM commissary or it might have been the Universal. 41 was done with 2 different studios. I think it was the MGM commissary, but we're in the back of the commissary. Steven Spielberg sitting there, John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, and me, the 4 of us. So I'm like Ralph Cramden, humana. I didn't say a word. Nick, I could not talk. I literally couldn't talk. I sit there with my jaw dropping. Somehow I ordered my lunch. I don't remember what it was. So for like an hour, those 3 are kibitzing, and I'm like listening like an idiot, nodding my head, and I didn't say a word. Then finally I realized I didn't have any money. I go, "Oh my God, I can't pay for lunch." And luckily Steven picked up the tab. So that was my lunch with Spielberg.
Man.
Lunch with Spielberg, Belushi, and Aykroyd. Coolest lunch of my life.
Spielberg, Belushi, Dan
And Dan
Aykroyd,
Aykroyd. Yep. And
and
me.
Ralph Cramden was there too.
No, you seen The Honeymooners, right?
Yes, I have. Yeah, yeah,
Ralph Cramden, homina, homina, homina. I'm
yeah.
just
Oh,
saying I
you
was
like? Okay,
overwhelmed.
yeah,
You know, when Ralph sees a beautiful woman, he'll go homina, homina, homina,
yeah,
homina.
yeah,
That
yeah,
means
yeah.
like, oh my God, geez, what am I doing here? It's like I'm on another planet. He was like overwhelmed. So I'm homina, homina. It's nomenclature. It just means I can't speak. I'm so overwhelmed,
No, I got you, man. I got
Yeah.
you there. I'm thinking for a moment. I'm like, wait, Ralph Cramden was there too. Like that's just,
No, no.
I'm putting this together in my head, just trying to picture. I think I would be the same way too.
Yeah. I was a
You got-
22-year-old kid. I just got I've been in the business for 2 years and I'm talking to these legends. And John
Right.
would be gone not that far in the future. He was only going to last a couple more years.
Well, right, yeah. Now, I think we want to wrap this one up here. I want to say, like, for anyone who's getting into the movies, I mean, who has been, you know, you've been there. If you've been, it was your fifth decade doing this right now, or inside your fifth decade. What advice would you have for somebody who wants to get into it now?
Well, like I say, have a nest egg. Definitely have a nest egg. Definitely have money. That's the biggest thing. Now, the other necessarily evil is you have to find an agent. You're going to need an
Right.
agent because you can't do it yourself. So I always go find a friend with an agent and get him to introduce you. Definitely have a friend with an agent. You have to have an acting friend. Find someone with an agent. Say, can I meet your agent? Can your agent talk to me and see if you can get agents to have it? Because the other way is you have to send your picture out. You send out
Right.
pictures, and every agent has like a stack
You
of
have to do
pictures
the
that you have virtually
headshot.
no
Yeah.
chance. Hardly anybody's
Yeah.
going to look at your picture and say, "Oh my God, I'm impressed. I want to cause," because they just have too many. Or a lot of agents aren't seeing new clients. But if they have a client that knows an agent and they can maybe put in a good word for you, maybe that can help. You have to get an agent. You have to have the money, and like I say, you have to want it real bad. And the other philosophical, metaphysical thing is you have to believe in yourself, which is true in any profession in life, but in showbiz, of course, in baseball, if you're a doctor or a secretary or whatever, really believe in yourself, and you can't give up that belief in yourself that I'm worth it, I'm really great, I can do the job. So believe in yourself and don't give up. Don't let anybody disabuse you of your own greatness, because everybody does have their own greatness.
Somebody's the Michael Jordan of something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
somebody's the Michael Jordan of something, somebody's the Babe Ruth of something,
Yeah.
somebody's the Henry Winkler of something, the Curly Howard, whatever.
Yeah.
There's probably Nick, there's probably this nurse that's probably the greatest nurse in the country, and we don't know her name, but there's probably this nurse who goes and every patient gets blown out. She's so cool, or the greatest doctor, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's probably the greatest secretary in the world out there, and we don't know her, and she's taking these notes, and her boss is like blown. I can't believe how efficient you are.
Right. Man, so I want to thank you for joining us in this wonderful conversation, man.
Oh,
I
sure.
This has been so much fun, and so it's always great to do this. Um, for Movie Theater Time Machine fans, we want to thank you for taking time. And for everybody who's listened to this, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. But this has been great, man. Eddie Deezen, thank you very much. And as
Well,
always,
thank you. I want to thank you, Nick. You're a totally wonderful guy. You're a marvelous gentleman. It's a pleasure to
thanks,
talk to
man.
you, and thank you for having me on your show. Please have me back sometime. I love
I
doing your
will do,
podcast.
man. And for
Yeah.
everybody else, we always want to say be good and take care of yourself, but don't be that good now.